Hey YouTube, in this video I kind of wanted to go over my initial impression, my initial thoughts on Intel's new Arc A770 GPU, and I guess sort of also just the whole product launch experience, the early adopter experience in general. So you can see down here I have it installed. It's working pretty good. The hardware out of the box. Let me go ahead and open up the case so you can see. So this is my old Corsair 600T case, one of the best legendary cases of all time. So anyway, you can see it down there. It's the RGB's lit up. I haven't bothered to connect the cable to control the RGB yet. I'm just playing around with it. You can see I have an AverMedia 4K capture card, and then I have another AverMedia 4K capture card down there. So this is on a Z690 gigabyte gaming XDDR4 motherboard. So a couple of things. I do plan to test it with my new Ryzen 7000 desktop. I just wanted to see if it's easier to connect it with an Intel CPU. But a couple of comments on that. So what I've learned is if you have a CPU with integrated graphics, and if you actually have the iGPU enabled, not disabled, so if you have it enabled in the BIOS, like if you're on an Intel, most likely you'd be on an Intel CPU, maybe an AMD 7000 series could run into the same problem. Essentially what happens is, I wired this up, I connected all three of my monitors to the back of the Arc GPU, turned it on, it posted, but I didn't get a display at all. So I started thinking, you know, that's weird. So I disconnected one monitor display port, I connected it into the motherboard, and then sure enough, the Windows login came up. So that told me, okay, so it's running off of the integrated graphics, so I have to install the drivers. So I went and I installed the drivers. So this monitor was connected to the integrated graphics, so it lit up. I could see a display, so I could get into Windows. And then I proceeded to go online, download the drivers, got those downloaded, and then as soon as those installed, this monitor and that monitor, which were both connected to the graphics card, came up normally, but then I had to reboot the computer, because it said you have to reboot your computer. So I did that. GPU-Z shows the Arc GPU in. You can see it there. This is the latest. This is version 50. I have GPU-0 is the primary. That shows up as Intel UHD, and then the second one is the Arc GPU, Intel Arc A770. So it shows up after installing the drivers. Everything seems to be working. I go in to test the Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker benchmark, because that's typically the first benchmark I always run, because it's a game benchmark, it's a long benchmark, and it tests the CPU bottleneck, GPU bottleneck, and everything. So this ran, but the weird thing is, and I'm going to show you guys right here, when I run it, let's go ahead and just start this up. Actually, let me put, it's just like AMD, in the sense that when you have multiple monitors connected, so in this case I have a 24-inch 1440p, 144 hertz. This is an Agon or AOC 241QX. So I have two of these. I have one here, then I have one here. That's two 1440p, 144 hertz, 24-inch, and then I have the new Sony. You can kind of see the logo down there. So the Sony, this is the Sony InZone. This is a Sony InZone M9, I believe. So this is a FreeSync monitor, just like those two. So everything's FreeSync. This is a 4K 27-inch that supports HDR10, and it's a brand new monitor. The only problem with this monitor, and this, I have run into weird issues with this monitor, so I don't know if I should be blaming the Intel GPU or if I should be blaming this monitor, because this monitor can do weird things where it's really slow to wake up from sleep compared to the other two, and then that can cause weird stuff where it's like you wake from sleep, the computer, and then like any window, like these two for instance, the browser and this, they'll like vanish, or not, they won't vanish, they'll be moved to one of the other monitors that woke up faster than this. I don't know if the problem is this monitor or if it's the way the graphics card interacts with this monitor. It's just kind of weird, but it happens on any GPU. I've tested, like the GeForce stuff from Nvidia. So we'll be comparing it with a GTX 1080, because some people are probably on 10 series and like maybe 1060, 1070 or this, and they're thinking about upgrading to ARC. Or if you're on like older AMD, like this is a Radeon RX 480, this is the 8GB. We also have like some other GPUs, some newer ones like the 3090 Ti. I don't think this is a valid card to compare this to, but you can just kind of just compare the driver quality experience. Then of course the ARC, the Radeon 6700 XT, which I still believe this was the initial target in terms of the performance. I think when Intel set out to develop this GPU, I think they were targeting this GPU from AMD and the 3070 from Nvidia, but for some reason their driver quality just wasn't up to par, so it just kind of fell through, and now it's like a whole tier down where it was supposed to be. Because when you look at the card, if you actually get one of these, the quality of this card physically seems very, very well done. So it's meant like it's supposed to be a high-performance GPU. More like a 70 series class, hence the numbering that they went with. So it's kind of like, the card that it reminds me of a lot is actually the 5700 XT from AMD. This is from 2019, and I think that this card, in terms of what I've seen from benchmarking the new ARC GPU, it's very, very similar to the 5700 XT, like in terms of the performance. And if we're comparing Nvidia, that would be kind of like a 1080 Ti or like a 2080. The thing about this GPU is this GPU has gotten a lot better with driver updates in the last 3 years. This used to compete with the 2070 at release. This was like $399 MSRP. So, you know, at release compared to this, which is like $349, they're similarly priced, and then they're similarly spec'd. They're both 225 watt TDP, so they both have the 8-pin and the 6-pin. You know, they're very, very similar in a lot of specs. With time, what I expect to happen from Intel, and I hope they keep true to their word on this, but I think that with updates, this GPU can grow from being currently around a 5700 XT to eventually grow closer in performance to a 6700 XT. Because the 5700 XT is kind of like a 6600, somewhere between like a 6600 to a 6600 XT. Not quite as good as a 6600 XT, so it's more like in between the 6600, which is exactly what reviewers showcase in their reviews of the A770. So that's kind of where I expect it to grow into. I kind of expect it to creep up the stack in terms of performance over time, just like what I saw with this card. Because if AMD can do it with the 5700 XT, where this used to be a 2070 competitor, now it's more like a 2080 competitor or a 1080 Ti competitor, I think this could do the same thing. Because I think this should be able to compete with the 2080 Ti. That's kind of where I see it. That's where this card falls. So anyway, let me show you guys an example of kind of the weird issues that I've seen. And I'll probably do more coverage on this. But like, for example, so let's go back to this YouTube video. So this is from Build or Buy. So I recommend this channel if anybody wants to know about motherboards in depth, like added cards, storage. If you're like a prosumer or content creator, you want to know like what's a good workstation build, I recommend this channel. But anyway, I was noticing, okay, see, there we go. It goes black, and all I did was I full screened the browser, and it just like does that, scanning for signal. And then, so far the video quality looks okay. So it didn't do it there, let's do it again. Okay, but see, that's kind of, and I move it over here, move it back. Seems like it's doing okay now. It's like it wants to behave when it knows it's being watched. So, okay, let's leave that video running. Now let's try, oh, but see, look, now, see how that's out of focus? That's out of focus. Yeah, now the picture here, it's, I don't know, it's not really showing up on camera. Yeah, see? It's all blurry. So that's a bug, and I don't understand what created that. Like if I move this over here, that fixes it. See? I move the browser over here and it fixes it. I move it away, now it's over on the other monitor over here, and that's like that. See how that's like all blurry? But if I move the web browser over here, it fixes it. I move it away, it makes it blurry. So this is what I mean by it's so buggy. Like, see how that displays like that? Width and height for the resolution, but then I move this over and all of a sudden it becomes in focus again. That's weird. So that's not the camera, that's the monitor. Like, and it's only like half of the monitor. Like here it's blurry or unreadable, and then over here it's normal. So I don't understand what's going on. This is what I mean by this definitely doesn't feel like I can even see it on the, it's like something here is messed up. So it definitely doesn't feel like it's meant for, or it's not ready for the average consumer. Like, this is definitely not something that I could recommend for someone that's wanting to build their own PC or they want to upgrade. Like, I can't recommend this today as it is in the current state for someone who's looking at like upgrading from an RX 480 or a GTX 1060, you know, because typically this card would be a really good upgrade for those, because like I said, it's very similar to a 5700 XT, but it's a lot newer, so you would think that it would be better, but the driver quality is just not there. It's very disappointing because, you know, a lot of people seem to want to hate on AMD sometimes when it comes to drivers. Man, I had a AMD card in here before I swapped out to this to test this, and it's night and day difference. Like, the AMD card never had any of these weird issues. Intel card, you put it in, boom, all these issues. So here's another weird bug that I found is if you go to the main monitor, so this is my main monitor, if you right click, you open Intel Arc. So this is on a 4K monitor, so everything's kind of small, but if you see, there's Intel Arc. So I'm going to right click the desktop, I'm going to click on that. You want to open that? Yes. It's funny how Windows doesn't trust it. So I open it. The thing is, when I first installed it, it was okay. It opens up as an entire overlay over the primary display. But now, for some reason, it's opening up over here on this monitor, and this is the first monitor, because if we open up and then it goes away when I click on it. So I have monitor 1, 2, and 3. So from Windows point of view, this one, so the main one is 3. That's the one labeled as main for Windows, but 1 is like the first one that the GPU considers connected to it, I think. Because if it's anything like AMD 1 indicates the one that is connected to the first PHY, so the first display port or the first display output on the graphics card. So AMD says 1 will mean it's the first one. I'm assuming Intel's the same way, because when I right click and try to open the ARC control center, it opens it up on monitor 1. So when I try to click on something, like let's say I click on driver, it goes away, nothing happens. So something's broken. So that's a bug. So that's another bug. I can't even get into the control panel. I'll probably have to reboot the computer to be able to get back in. So that's really annoying. But if it's like Nvidia doesn't follow that convention. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell on Nvidia what the primary monitor is. The only way to know is to, when the computer is booting up, the one that will show the motherboard logo at post is the first one on the first PHY for the Nvidia GPU. But in Windows, that typically doesn't always map to 1. Case in point, on my 3090 Ti, 3 is what it would say is the first one on the actual GPU, even though Windows thinks that 3 is, you know, like the primary. So it's kind of weird. I don't know. So Nvidia's different from the other two, but I think AMD and Intel kind of follow the same numbering convention, which is, in my opinion, easier to remember or understand than Nvidia's method. But anyway, another bug is I can't even get into Davinci Resolve. I try to open Davinci Resolve. Okay, let's right click and run as administrator. Do you want to run Blackmagic Davinci Resolve? Yes. And nothing happens. So nothing. Yeah. So I don't know what the problem is. I I don't know if I need to DDU my Nvidia and my AMD drivers from the system, or if I need to completely reinstall Davinci Resolve. Typically, when I switch between Nvidia and AMD, I never have to do any of that. I know some people do, but I never bother to uninstall my... Like, if I go to AMD from Nvidia, I never uninstall my Nvidia drivers, and likewise, if I'm going to Nvidia from AMD, I never uninstall the Radeon drivers. I leave both of them in there, because if I ever swap my GPU, I don't have to waste time installing drivers again. It just redetects the card, and just goes from there. But that might be something I might need to do as a troubleshooting step. But that's what it's like to be an early adopter for something like this. So this definitely does feel... I do understand where I think Gamers Nexus in their review, they did say that it feels like a toy. It feels... It does kind of feel like a toy because you're playing around with it, trying to explore all these weird... Find all these... unturn all these, like, bugs that exist and figure out if there's anything you can do to work around them. But it's... Yeah, it's gonna boil down to developer support. Like the Intel driver team has a lot of work to do. Wow. So you're gonna have a high idle temps. I'll show you guys my idle temps. We're not playing any games. You can see right here we're running at 2,000 megahertz on the memory, so it's maxed out, and it's 50 Celsius at idle, and the fan won't stop. It runs. It has to run when you're doing multi-monitor. See, it's got like 600, 700 RPM, and it has to do that, otherwise it'll just overheat, or it'll just run at like 60 Celsius all the time, which is not good. So I'm okay that the fans are running, because I'm doing multi-monitor. All three of them are 144 Hertz, so it's high bandwidth. This one's an HDR monitor, so it is what it is. But, you know, if you're an enthusiast and you have all this high-end stuff, you know, this doesn't really pair all that great with it. So I recommend no higher than 1440p. I think this card will really shine at 1440p as it gets better, because like I was saying earlier, and I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but the 5700 XT was an amazing 1440p graphics card for the money back in 2019. And it was the first PCI Gen 4 GPU from AMD. Actually, I think it was the first 4.0 Gen 4 graphics card ever, because I think RTX 20 series was still PCI 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. So 30 series was the first Gen 4 from Nvidia. So anyway, yeah. So this card was a pretty good one. This was a good, like, first of its kind, underappreciated card. But anyway, that's it for me. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Let me know. If you're curious on any aspects of the Intel Arc card. And let me know if you're able to get one on launch day. And if you're really looking for one of these, hopefully you'll be able to get one. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get on here, guys, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.